Committee to order at 6:34 p.m. this Tuesday, April 16th, 2024. Did we have any minutes? I don't think I saw any minutes.
No,
No minutes.
no. And I gave you a host, so have a good night.
Have a good trip. Be safe.
I'll see you next Friday.
Wow.
Have fun,
Bye,
Deb.
guys.
Have fun.
Bye, guys.
Have
Bye,
fun.
Deb.
Bye.
Have a
Bye.
good time.
No minutes to act on tonight. Is there anyone from the public here that wishes to speak at our meeting? Anyone from the public? I see 6 participants. I see 6 people, 4 faces and 2 names. Okay, I will move on to legislation referred. We have about 7 items to go over tonight. Order FY 24-040, the transfer order of water capital. That is, this was referred to us at the last council meeting. You want to explain it a little bit, Michael? Just a little bit.
Sure, let me apologize. Let me just open up the right folder here. Lori, I'll defer to Lori. She probably knows more about it than I do.
Hi, yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair and esteemed colleagues. I'm gonna miss you guys. No, it's just
My last budget and finance meeting.
I know. But well, Mr. Lindy will hold down the fort, right, Mark?
Yes, he will.
Sure.
Yes, he will.
So this order actually missed the capital deadline. So we put it on separately. There is repairs and restoration of the concrete base collar around the water tower at Great Hill. That we have to stay in compliance with DEP. There was an inspection and the concrete is crumbling. And this has been in the queue for about 6 months because we had to go out and get higher, to get some quotes on it, but it just got missed on the first round for the water capital, so that is what this order is.
Any questions, Council Lindy or Councilor George?
Nope.
No.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion by Councilor George and second by Councilor Lindy to recommend to the council. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's 3-0. The next item is the budget order FY 25-001, the FY 25 annual town budget. We've had this, the detail and the highlights for a couple weeks now. I'll defer to either Mike or Laurie to go over some of the highlights of the budget and then open it up to any questions. This will not be on the agenda for Tuesday night council meeting. So our only role would be to ask questions and perhaps make a recommendation, which we should. I believe the town manager's goal would be to have it voted on the first meeting in May with the new council or something like that. So yeah.
Yep, correct. So I'll start it off if you want. It's essentially a pretty low, no frills budget in comparison to last year. We really haven't done anything major. No new spending. No radical revisions or redirected spending. So it's a pretty stable budget, and we did that on purpose, knowing that we were going to see a reduction in local receipts. We're cautious. I think I've mentioned this before. We're cautious about using the governor's cherry sheet estimates that she put out in her budget. The House obviously is proposed to reduce her numbers. So we'll see what the Senate does, and we may not know that until after the beginning of the fiscal year, but not uncommon. So reductions, we've been held the line in estimating our receipts, local receipts, quite on purpose. We've seen a reduction in pretty much across the board. Not drastic, although building permits, we've seen a pretty substantial decrease. So in terms of expenses, really haven't made any dramatic changes in our expenses. We have five, I believe, 5 bargaining unit negotiations coming up for contracts that are ending June 30th. And we have obviously we haven't funded any salary table adjustments, but we have funded step increases in this budget, which is our practice. And what else can I just go over? We do highlight. I want to highlight one thing, and I did it in my budget message. We don't see transportation, Bristol Aggie, Norfolk Aggie, which just happen to be the 2 agricultural schools, the out-of-district placement schools that we have to pay for directly. We see tremendous increases in transportation costs there. And I think I had mentioned last year we actually paid more in transportation than we did in tuition at one or both of those schools. So we're keeping an eye on that. That's a regional issue. It's not just an us issue. Plymouth does not have its own agricultural school, so all the towns in Plymouth County are forced to absorb not only the tuition costs but also the transportation costs. So we're banding together to see if we can do something jointly in terms of transportation to those 2 schools specifically. But for right now, we're obligated to pay the assessed transportation costs for those 2. But I do want to let you know that we have our eye on that pretty carefully. So very generally, other notable increases. We did have an increase in retirement and sort of our employee benefits line. I think we had estimated that our health insurance, we had been estimating a 10% increase. Health insurance increases this year appear to be more in line with, I believe, 4%. Lori, correct me if I'm wrong. So that's a little bit of good news on that front. But otherwise, I'm more than happy to answer any questions anybody has or to pick apart different numbers or whatever the case may be.
So, Michael, I'm just going to keep this in general terms. There seems to be some pretty significant increases in salaries for department heads. I'm looking at the report that you sent, and I'm just using round numbers. The budget increase basically is 5.26%, and I know that that's a round number in regards to COLAs and staffing and things like that. But you've got some numbers in here that are in the 9.5%, 10%. Can you just give me an idea of basically why we would see, either a 8.5 to 10% increase?
Yep. Let me give you sort of our approach and what we've been doing over the last number of years. So employees covered by bargaining units are sort of the exception. They're governed by a different set of rules. So employees that are not governed by union contracts are essentially at-will employees. And we try to get to market rates. A lot of people go out and will test the market and see what their value is essentially on the open market, especially in this atmosphere where it's very challenging for employers to either keep people or recruit people in the government sector. So we make adjustments if we think that if a particular employee has gone out to test the marketplace and has gotten an offer, we don't necessarily match that offer. We will make an effort to do something that may come close, and I don't think we've matched any offer actually to date, but we do for the most part, we want the particular employees to stay with us. Some of them are really critical pieces of our what we do. So essentially, it's market driven, Sean. It's we and it's not market driven. The private sector is a whole different animal, as you know. It's municipal work. So we are, the numbers you see reflect some of the probably dramatic increases in some positions, not all, but in some positions. And so that's essentially it. We just have to retain, we have to make decisions about retaining employees that are critical to the success of the operation.
Yeah, so, and appreciate that. So when I'm looking at the report, and this is the general government report. So you've got, under grades and steps, those are employees at will, correct?
Everybody is on a grade and step schedule.
So if you got something that's notated as personal contract, what is that?
Those are the handful of employees that are operating under personal contract. I am, Lori is, excuse me. Dazu, the DPW director, Brad Deerzak, the IT director. There's a handful of them that operate under personal service contract.
Okay, and the personal service contract dictates say it's a 3-year contract, just for discussion. It specifically dictates in there what their increase will be, year 2, year 3, correct?
Exactly. Yep. So
is it common practice to have 8.5% and 9% and 10% increases in a personal contract?
No, not within I would never negotiate a contract that has yearly increases of that amount. Usually our increases are 2.5 to 2.8, depending on a number of different factors, but I wouldn't negotiate something that was that substantial. So if you're looking at a line item that's that substantial, you're looking at probably that market rate, that initial contract negotiation and a reflection of the market rate, or something just a little bit less than market is generally where we come in, but that's what you're looking at.
So if I'm looking at this, and I want to keep this in general terms, and in 2025, someone's getting they're under a personal contract, and they're getting a 9.5% increase. Is that indicative of someone that has a new contract, and that's the first completed year, or coming into their first year of a, say, 3-year contract, again, or 5-year, whatever the term is?
Yeah, 3-year contract, and that could, yes, probably that it could be that an employee left and we had to hire a new employee, and that's what we had to pay. But I think you're probably your first observation is accurate. That's probably a conversion after an employee received a job offer from a competing, I won't say competing town, but another town. And we felt that it was important to retain the employee, and we tried to come close to matching the offer.
Okay. I'm all for people getting their fair share. It just, and I don't know this intimately, just a few of them, I'd be a little surprised if that were the case in regards to the history of where they've been and where they're going, from that perspective. And again, I'm not necessarily trying to say they're overpaid, but even in private public sector, to see that much of an increase for someone who's been in that role for years is just a little surprising to me.
No, that's a point well taken. I will point out that where you might see an increase that size, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're in the same role. And the expectations, my expectations are when negotiating a personal service contract in particular, my my expectations are very clear about where we're going and where what expectation that particular employee has to step up and do more essentially. So that's never far from my my mind.
Okay, thank you.
So quick question, being new to this, how many personal service contracts are there? So,
I want to say police chief, fire chief, finance director, me, technology officer. I want to say there's probably 5 or 6, Mark.
Assistant town manager.
Yeah,
town
assistant
manager.
town manager and town manager. Yep.
Yep.
So there's 2, 4, 6.
did you mention a zoo before?
And the DPW
director.
director. Yep.
Yeah, okay,
Yep. So 6 or
Just-
7.
just curious. Okay. And Sean asked the question I was gonna ask, so thanks, Sean. Gonna miss you. I don't have other questions.
Okay, so thank you, Mark. I have one question, Mike, and it's on the veterans, the veterans agent. So I see that the salary is adjusted to reflect a full-time position. So as far as an assistant vets agent or the administrative support person, where is that going to be paid out of? And what role is Rainham going to have in this budget process with the funds?
That's all good questions. And I was actually in the car on the phone with Rainham talking about this just probably half an hour ago. So this piece of the budget, most of it's not a work in progress. It's all pretty much set, but this is one area where it may be a work in progress. Rainham has not actually voted. They need to vote to actually join our district. And so at that point, I think we'll come back and we'll look for a budget revision. It won't be significant, but we'll be looking for a budget revision of, I don't know, maybe $8,000 in that neighborhood.
Okay, so so they haven't. So the administrative support, they're going to be taking up that, or how? I guess.
So, yeah, no. If all goes according to plan, they will take up the administrative support, and obviously we have a budget for our VSO, Veteran Services Officer. The only thing that we have not accounted for yet is the part-time veteran service officer, which we will have to that's the budget revision that we'd have to make at some point. And I didn't want to budget that right away without knowing that Rainham was on board with the district. It appears they are, but it's just a matter of vote and how long some votes can take. So,
but if you have to make a budget adjustment for only $8,000, what will that reflect?
So we actually have a little extra budget in extra money in the VSO line, and then we'd be looking to fund a little extra additional funding for the assistant VSO. So between I want to say 8 to 10,000, just to give you a ballpark estimate, and between that and the slight overage that we've got in that line item currently, we think we can fund the part-time VSO.
So then Rainham's FY25 budget, if they approve the district, they will fund the clerical support person. Okay.
And they'll offset what we're going to be spending on our VSO as well.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. All right. I hope it works out. I'm sure
I think it will.
Any other
Oh.
questions? Yeah,
Nope, I'll make the motion to recommend.
the
I'll
motion,
second.
the motion to recommend is a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Is that an aye, Sean? Yeah.
Yep.
Yep, 3-0. Okay, third, item C, budget order FY 25-002, FY 25 water enterprise fund budget.
This budget is again pretty straightforward. It funds the water operation and also funds the debt for our new excuse me, our new water treatment plant. And so that is what's in front of you. Lori, I don't know if you have anything additional.
Just that we did put a slight increase in here based on a small increase in the water revenue anyway. Just to keep up with the expenditures and everything. So hopefully when we come back to the water and sewer rates, the issue is if something happens and they don't pass, we'll have to come back before the council and probably use some retained earnings funds for, that would apply for both water and sewer.
So does this have the 7% increase we talked about before, or is that in a different?
That's the revenue.
It's in here. It's factored into the budget.
Okay,
Any other questions on the water enterprise fund budget? I'll entertain a motion to recommend.
So moved.
second,
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
3-0. George. And okay, now we're going to item D, budget order FY 25-003, FY 25 sewer enterprise fund budget.
sewer enterprise.
Did I say sewer?
You didn't, you just said enterprise.
Thought I said sewer.
Unless I didn't hear it.
Any
okay.
questions of the town manager with,
Is that the one with the 50% increase?
right, the budget isn't necessarily going up 50%, but
Right.
the revenue probably will.
But that 50% is budgeted in here?
Yeah, towards capital mostly, probably, yeah.
Yeah, Lori,
Well,
do you want to?
Yeah, well, we do have to, it's increased because of the wastewater treatment plant phase 1 funding. It's supposed to close, we think, at the end of November. Phase 1 is complete. So we'll need to make the first principal payment in this budget. So
In the FY 25 budget.
yes.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion to recommend.
So moved.
I'll second. But I'm still not clear, I'm sorry. I'm new at this part. So
Second.
I know it's just a recommendation and the council takes up the budget, but is the 50% increase in here?
So
Well,
well, go ahead,
That's
Lori.
my point. Well, you can go ahead.
All right, so the 50% increase in the rates won't necessarily be directly reflected in a 50% increase in the budget. So what we do is we try to get ahead of the curve. So we'll have certain debt payments now that phase 1 is coming to a close. So we haven't had to make a principal payment, and we won't until the project is phase 1 is complete. So once phase 1 is complete, then we will have a principal payment due in whatever, say January. So this, the 50% increase in the fees will allow us to cover that principal payment and interest, obviously. And then it'll ramp up and we'll be, next year we'll be paying the full freight. So there's not necessarily completely direct correlation. But we want to make sure that we are maintaining our retained earnings levels because that's important for capital and bond rating purposes. So we want to make sure that we maintain that those sort of essentially capital reserves as we move forward. So that's why, you know, the shock of the 50% increase in the sewer rates, which on a dollar basis isn't as bad as the percentage sounds, but it's still a substantial increase. So we want to establish that and then make sure that we're retaining, you know, some of the earnings over the next several years, just to make sure that we ease in to the payment of the principal and interest amounts on a yearly basis or twice annually or whatever it is. Does that make sense, Mark?
It does, but I mean, I know this is a recommendation, but am I ultimately voting, if I vote for this, am I voting for the increase, the water and
No.
sewer? Okay, that's all. I want.
Not necessarily. I
Yeah.
mean, if we don't, so as Lori said, if the fees don't pass, then we've got to retrench and radically revise the budget, but we're also likely going to have to tap general fund revenues in order to offset what, you know, the things we have to pay. So we have to pay the debt service.
Yep.
And we've known that. So that's essentially what would happen. But this voting to recommend the budget, the operating budget, isn't a vote to approve fees by any means.
Okay,
Yeah, and the debt service payment is only principal because we were given interest forgiveness, so which was a savings of like $3 million. So we don't have to pay that part back, but the principal will begin in FY26. So it's like 1.7 million. So if you add in a 1.7 million to this budget, then it's going to be jamming. So
right, okay. Thank you very much for the clarification.
And just so you know, Mark, the Tuesday night's meeting, the rates are on the agenda for the council.
Right, right. I haven't looked yet.
Pending a recommendation from the FinCom, because they haven't made a recommendation on the water and sewer rates yet. But we did recommend 3-0 to recommend them to the council. The rates.
And hopefully we'll have a quorum at the finance committee meeting.
Right. Okay, I'll entertain, we already had the motion and a second. That was further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 3-0. We'll move on to item E, FY 25004, FY 25 Transfer Station Enterprise Fund budget. How's it doing? Is it holding its own, Mike?
Holding its own.
yeah.
Not too bad. I mean, it's it's always a challenge. That solid waste is it's amazing how volatile solid waste is. You would never think, but it is. So
There's no need to transfer money to cover their losses or anything this year, right?
Knock
No,
on wood, no.
No, they went up in their rates last year. Was it last year? Or?
Yeah.
But their costs have gone up too, so it's kind of, they're not putting enough away yet, but hopefully they'll put enough away so that they can do a couple of improvements anyway.
Any questions about the?
I'll make the recommendation to refer to the council.
Second.
The motion by Councilor Lindy, seconded by Councilor George to recommend. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
3-0. Item F, FY 25005, authorization of the revolving funds. This is just a normal procedure we take every year to allow those that take in their own cash to keep doing it.
Pretty much.
Right.
We've got four remaining revolving funds, and they each have to be authorized generally as part of the budget process for the following fiscal year. So, and they're relatively small. Recreation is the only one that's over $20,000. Recreation covers is to cover summer camp expenses and so forth. So the fees that come in can offset the cost of the programs that are being offered.
Any questions about the revolving accounts to the town manager or the finance director?
So, I'm not sure if this falls under revolving, probably more well, I don't even know if it's enterprise anymore. With the golf course, Michael, I know that we're still, 2 months roughly away from the fiscal year end. But do we have a sense of where that's going to land at the end of June? Those numbers?
We do. I think Lori's got the figures probably more off in the top of her head, but I think golf generally has done very well.
Yeah, the last 2 years with the agreement, their calendar year ends their financial, so they have it in their agreement to pay us in the winter, so we just got a payment of, well, I can send you some info on that, but we were very pleased that it was, more than enough that we had to transfer in, so you'll see a transfer coming in because all of the fund from the rental from Castaways and the rental from the Troon Company goes into the golf receipts reserved fund, so the only way the money comes out of that is if we transfer it, and so we've only transferred, I think, 200, what's on the in the order, and that covers the cost of any of the golf retirees or and then the debt service that still remains, and the debt service has only got another 2 years. I think it's like under 50,000, so that's really good. So we'll have some money building up in that fund that, in agreement as the landlords, we have to do maybe some capital work, but that will come before us and be transferred out for any kind of projects that need to be done for that, so.
Okay, so they're on a calendar year end, not our fiscal year?
Correct, yep,
Okay, thank you.
sure.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion to authorize revolving account funds.
I'll make a motion to recommend.
Second,
Motion by Council George, second by Council Lindy. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
aye,
Aye,
Recommended 3-0. Item G, FY 25-006, CPA reserve accounts for fiscal 25. Do you want to just kind of go over it quickly, Michael? We have this
Sure.
in front of us. The state doesn't match us quite as much as they used to, huh?
Yeah, no kidding. It's an understatement.
Yeah.
So the CP Community Preservation Act in Bridgewater was, I think, voted about 15 years ago, something like that. And we're
2003.
considered when was it?
2003.
Oh my words. Okay, a long time ago, 20 years ago. Wow. So we are 2% community, which means we assess a 2% surcharge on the property tax bill. And that funds, I think this year that will fund roughly 875,000, something in that range. Yep. And then the state back in 2003 was promising to match, do 100% match to whatever cities and towns collected. And you can see their state match, what we're projecting at least is $100,000. That's probably on the conservative side, but still, it doesn't come close to the 100% match from 20 years ago. So the CPC requires, the law requires that we create essentially 3 buckets. That's how we refer to them. And most people do. The 3 buckets. One's for historic preservation, one is for housing, and one is for open space and rec expenditures. And then within each of those buckets, there are a lot of rules about what you can spend money on and what you can't spend money on, which I won't go over now. But the law requires that you fund at least 10% of your revenues or your projected revenues into each of those buckets. So you'll see this year's CPC community preservation budget's a little different than most years. You'll see that they're putting in 10% of projected revenues into open space, which is 97,500. They're putting 0 into historic, and they're putting 97,500 into community housing. So that 0 is kind of like sticks out like a sore thumb. Well, the reason for that is the committee knows that it's going to have a fair amount of expenditure to do what it wants to do for open space purchases hopefully this coming fiscal year. And they want to make sure that they put as much money in sort of the undesignated fund balance, which is all the money left over essentially after the 3 buckets are filled. They want to put as much money in there as possible. The 10% requirement for historic is made up by the expenditure for the Academy building, which you can see there is $325,800. So that's far more than the 10% that they would have to set aside. That appropriation qualifies as historic because it was granted for historic purposes. So they more than cover the historic. They just don't do it with the sort of that budgeted normal budget, 10% into each of the 3 buckets. So that's sort of a long explanation of sort of the quirky budget. They also set aside 5%, up to 5% for administrative costs. And you can see here that they've funded $48,750 to administrative expenses. So that's kind of the quick update. If you want any questions or anything, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions?
Nope, not for me.
I'll entertain a motion to recommend the CPA reserve accounts for fiscal 25.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Lindy and seconded by Counselor George. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The recommendation passes 3-0. Is there any? I didn't see anyone jump on. There's still 6 people here. I still see 4 people and 2 names. So nobody's on for public comment. So nothing, there's nothing on the council's agenda Tuesday that's going to be referred to us. So
I don't believe so.
there will be no need to meet before the council meeting. And then whatever happens after that, that's in whoever council president is. So
We're not doing any more money articles, Dennis.
no money articles.
You guys are leaving us. We don't want.
Gonna be late May. Oh, you got the budget coming to. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 7:12 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, and all those in favor?
Aye.
We are now adjourned.
All right. Hey, thank you very much, Dennis
Thank you
and
guys very
Sean.
much.
Yeah,
See you
thanks, guys.
Tuesday.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
All
Good
right.
night.
All right. Night.
Night.